Welcome, guys, to the JSS Podcast. We have a special treat for everybody today. Joining us today here, first of all, it's a nice sunny day, right? So we have Jared Bernard with Goosehead Insurance. He's part of our weekly coffee and collab group that we've been getting together with. So wanted to bring him on, and I thought it was a good opportunity to talk a little bit about insurance and just life and sales and leadership and just kind of any topic that kind of comes up. So, Jared, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, guys. Really excited to be talking with you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Jared, one of the things that we're going to kind of jump right into it. One of the things that kind of stood out to me as we were kind of prepping for the interview was your Instagram handle.
Yeah.
Right. And I know offline we had previously talked about it a little bit, and social media is a big deal in this business, and it's hard, right? Because sometimes we feel we literally just talked about this a few minutes ago where we feel that as salespeople, real estate, mortgage, loans, all of it, we have to be TikTok personalities and do the dances and do this and all that stuff. And your Instagram handle is fishing for insurance. So tell us a little bit how that came about.
Yeah.
I'm guessing I got some, going through your feed, I got some ideas, but share with us a little bit about.
It's a new idea that kind of popped in my mind. I mean, just kind of taking a step back, like I was just reading the stats how the creator economy and like that content world is the new biggest channel for advertising, for marketing, and just for all things getting your name and your brand out there. So I kind of knew like forever, like, hey, you need to jump on that bandwagon because at the end of the day, it's how you expand your reach, you cast a wider net. Now I was never a very public person. I'm never really like, hey, look at this. I'm not going to be the guy filming myself, but I realized like you have to be in this day and age, no matter at a certain level. You don't need to be doing the dances. If you want to, that's great. But I feel
I
like
don't do the dances,
yeah,
by the way.
I feel like you have to be involved on the social media on all channels, some way or another. And I knew that I didn't want to just go into it of like, hey, here's insurance and here's all about insurance. And let me just like kind of jam that into your face of all things insurance. Insurance is great. We all need it and all have it. It's not the most exciting topic all the time. I do think there's an education standpoint that people do need to know about it. But I wanted to make it exciting. I wanted to make it unique to me. So that's how I kind of came up with fishing for insurance. A little background on me. I was born and raised in this area, in this beautiful Canal Valley of Ventura County, raised at the beaches. I was surfing, diving, fishing, you name it. So over these past few years, got very into spearfishing and offshore diving, really all the things around our ocean. People don't realize that our coast right here has so much to offer. I'm in no way, shape, or form a professional social media. I'm not a fisherman. I'm not even a professional chef, but I love all those things. So it just kind of was a natural thought where I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to take a dive into social media, let's make it a little bit unique here. Let's add some flair to it beyond just the insurance side. And that's where I kind of wanted to conjoin like my professional aspect of insurance and bring in like my own personal joys of fishing. I thought it would kind of create a unique brand around myself and go, okay, cool. This is something different. I'm not only seeing, insurance-based content, which I want to educate and I want to have portions of that, but also have, something that I call the catch and cook, where you go out, you show them what you're catching and, hey, look at this, mediocre dish I just put together. So
Look, I saw a couple that lobster and pasta over Taco Tuesday. I was like, I will gladly take lobster and pasta.
So that's how it came to mind. I kind of just thought of it, thought it was funny enough. The wife put her stamp of approval on it, and now I'm trying to get started. And that's how that conversation we are having, just an hour ago about that newfound respect for those influencers, because it is hard to make that content and it's hard to make it look pretty.
Yeah, no, you know what? I'm glad you bring that up because that's the biggest challenge we've always had, right? It's like I'm a little bit older, and my generation is hard. It goes against everything that I set out to be. Yeah, I'm a finance nerd. I'm a finance bro. The last thing I want to do is be talking in front of a camera,
Yep.
right? But you feel and you need that. It's like you have to kind of evolve if you want to succeed in business, and unfortunately and unfortunately this is part of it, right?
Yeah.
And then creating that brand for yourself, I think is the key, is the biggest thing. And that's one of the things that we've been trying to work on, and we're still working at it. We're trying to figure that out because, again, finance, mortgage, insurance, for us who do it every day, you're like, nobody wants to hear about this. No, like literally nobody wants to hear about it. At least that's what I always think. And then, we make content and people are like, oh, that was interesting. I never knew about
I
that.
didn't know
I
that.
didn't know that.
You're learning.
So, yeah, but I love the way you've set up your social media to that. And I know we talked about it where it's a certain percentage is personal, right? And then you bring in some insurance content and you got to do a little bit of both.
Of course.
Because I think, one of the things that we talked about in the group last week, I think it was where she mentioned, Emily does a great job kind of facilitating this group that we
Absolutely.
were part of, and she brought up, the fact that y- people need to know who you are before you start pitching them your content, right?
100%.
If not, nobody cares.
Yep.
Right? They want to know you as an individual first. One of the things that I've been teaching sales for years and years. One of the things that I've always taught people is people do business with people that they like.
Of course.
Right? Yes, you have to have a good product. You have to be priced effective. All that. Take that out of the equation. People don't give you that opportunity unless they like you.
Yep.
Right? And I think the only way is in nowadays is people get to know you by your social media.
Yeah.
Right? One of our approach to social media has always been more of less lead generating, which I know some people do, but for us, it's more of reputation and, building our brand so that when people look us up, they will find who we are and what we're about.
You have a digital footprint that you're proud of. Something that you can put out there and really show your authentic self. That was another thing that Marilee harped on was being authentic. And, I'm not bagging on anyone, but like sometimes you go across social media and you're like, I don't know how authentic that really is. I don't know this person well enough to know if this is true. But it does help you kind of build that charisma that like people understand like who you are as a person. Are you a family man? Are you from this area? What are your hobbies and interests? Because like you said, if you're gonna be doing business with someone, you want to like them.
Yes.
If I'm giving you a call, I don't want to be like, oh man, I gotta call Byron today. I don't want to call him, but no, it's like very much like, hey, I'm excited to talk. I know we're gonna have a great conversation. There's nothing rough about it. It's just very organic and enjoyable.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think over my career, I've been doing this almost 25 years. It's kind of that, right? The people that I do business with or I have the long lasting relationships with, it's people that I like, right? We talk baseball. I'm a big baseball guy. We would talk baseball, we talk sports, we talk vacations, wine and food, right? And all this stuff. And then you mix in a little bit of business, right? And I think that's what makes it fun, right? And I
Yep.
think that's what makes us individuals and makes us human. And that's um what makes this industry or all these, businesses kind of flow. So that being said, we're gonna ask a little bit about insurance, and I think I do want because I'm actually interested. We as a firm we focus a lot mostly on investors and people investing with us, investing capital or flipping properties and all that. And one of the things that I know we have a lot of challenges with is insurance.
Yep.
Right. And it's the types of policies that there is. Homeowners to landlord policies to construct policies while they're doing rehab. So
Yep.
give us a little bit of color on that, right? Just maybe, and I don't want to get into the
Yeah.
deep side of it, but it's the differences between a landlord policy, homeowners policy, and then maybe a policy where people are doing rehab on a property.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you bring that up because a lot of times I get phone calls from folks and they don't really know what kind of policy they need. Or you get the people who are just kind of blindly buying insurance. Hey, I have this investment property, but I need my homeowners. No, well, you're putting yourself at risk or you have a gap there. So let's kind of just like break those down real quickly without going too deep. The homeowners, yes, it's in the name. Do you own the home? Is this your primary dwelling? You live there. So homeowners is going to cover everything from your structure, your other structures, maybe it's a detached garage, maybe it's an ADU. It's going to cover your personal property that's inside of the house itself, everything from electronics, furniture, your wardrobe. And then the big kicker is your liability coverage. You're going to be a homeowner. Liability coverage is going to follow you around town. It's not only protecting you while, you're at your house. People think, oh, well, anyone who comes to my house, if they get injured, they're my friend or family, they're not going to sue me. Well, that's not the case. There's a lot of scenarios where you don't think that, but it's a must because medical bills get expensive and it's just kind of how it goes when someone gets injured. They got to look at where it's going to come from. So homeowners, yes, very much protecting you pretty much full circle as you're living in that property. Obviously, there's other coverages, endorsements that you can add on, and that's another conversation. But moving into landlord policy, is this your investment property or is it a second home? Are you renting this out for more than 30 days out of the year? So as a landlord policy, really what you're looking at is, of course, protecting the structure itself. Because you own that property, that dwelling. You might have some personal property, but you're not going to need $100,000 of personal property. You only need what you're having in that property. Maybe you have it furnished. Sometimes you don't. Maybe you have appliances in there. So you're kind of looking at, what is in that house that I own personally. Well, while you have that landlord policy, as a smart landlord, you should have your renters have a renter's policy
Oh, yeah.
because that's going to protect them with their own liability with their own personal property. So you're kind of looking at like what you're responsible for in those policies. So as a landlord, you're not responsible for the renter's personal property. That's on them. And it's up to the landlord to educate them and say, hey, you know what, you need to have a renter's policy. And sometimes it's in contract, sometimes it's not. But renters policies are also there to protect the renter. The landlord policy is there to protect the owner of the property itself. Now kind of moving into investment properties, this is big in this area. You have a ton of investors, fix and flip, whatever it is, builders. That's something kind of like the builder's risk policy. So as you're going in to purchase a home and you're renovating it or you're building from the ground up, you want to kind of protect your materials. You want to have liability. You want to have workers' comp. So as a builder's risk policy, you're really looking at protecting the interim from the time where the property is being built to the time, someone's actually living in it. Yeah. So it's that middle ground where people might think like, oh, I don't need insurance right now because the house is being built. There's nothing to protect. There's nobody living in there. Wrong. If anything goes wrong there, if there's theft, if any of your materials stolen or damaged, it's all going to be protected by these builders risk policies, depending on how you structure them. So they all have separate needs, but it's not all so cut and dry to the consumer. Some people are very educated in this area and they know what they need and others aren't. So a lot of the times people would come to me and say, oh, I need a renter's policy because I own this home and now I have renters there. No, you need a landlord policy. They need a renter's policy. It's a very quick conversation of letting them know and just guiding them to what they need, because you don't know what you don't know. And like we talked about at the beginning of this conversation was insurance isn't exciting. No one's going to be out there researching insurance unless they really want to educate themselves. So yeah, those three policies all protect separate things, separate people. And it's up to your agent, hopefully, is a good agent who can help educate you and help kind of guide you and steer you towards what you need.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you bring that up because that's the being on the financial side of it, right? Again, right? Our job is to mitigate risk. We're out there
Exactly.
protecting the asset, protecting our investors' money, all that stuff. You know, unfortunately, when the consumer comes in, they're looking at their costs,
Yeah.
right? And they're always like, oh, well, how much is it going to cost me? Can I get a cheaper policy? And I get it, right? We're all cutting corners and try to make a profit. But then when you look in the fact that you're exposing yourself, the liability, it's one of the things that I always tell my flippers is that you have contractors, you have laborers, you have people in and out of these properties that you're exposed.
Yep.
Right, you're completely exposed, and I think it's worth the couple $100, $1,000, or whatever it's going to cost you for that short period of time that you have people, working on the property, because that could derail the project, and that's your whole profit.
No matter how much you think people or trust people, when something goes awry, they're going to be looking, where do I resolve this? Where do I get the funds to fix this? Or maybe I have medical bills. Maybe I'm in a lawsuit. You need to always protect yourself, no matter how protector safe you think you are.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and it's funny you say, well, you never know. As much as you think you know somebody, I've heard a couple different, and I'm gonna ask you about this in a little bit, so maybe start prepping a horror story that you heard of. But I've heard multiple times story of, hey, I had a trampoline at the house. I had a
So,
birthday party. Somebody, we had
yeah,
kids over,
yeah.
and the kid broke his arm. Oh, don't worry, I'm not suing you. I'm just suing your insurance.
Well, that directly affects me.
Exactly. So if you want to talk a little bit about that, or maybe share a little something that you've heard,
Yeah.
along the
Yeah.
kind of battle stories.
There's a lot that goes into insurance. And when you give someone a quote, I think a lot of agents out there just say, hey, here's your quote. People go right to the premium. That's the big kicker, like you said. This day and age, life is expensive. You're always going to look at the bottom line cost. But you need to be looking at these coverages, these limits. Do they make sense to you? Do you understand what you're being covered for? And is it proper coverage? So a lot of people are trying to cut corners in that sense. Like, hey, can I bring down this coverage? Do I need that much in liability? And then you go into those horror stories because, you do hear them all too often. And, go drive down the 405 freeway. What is every single billboard you're going to see? It's an injury attorney. It's someone who's just looking to make a quick dollar. And it's really all you see on the freeways these days. So, those horror stories are plentiful. But one we just recently heard was, animal liability. A lot of people think, oh, well, I don't have a pit bull and I'm a German Shepherd. Or they don't have any bite history. I don't need animal liability. Well, a client of ours had a Schnauzer, which is a very small dog, harmless. So she says, no, you know what? We don't need animal liability. We try to explain to her like, hey, well, it's not just bite history. It's not that your dog is small. There's always something, the dog can run into the street, cause a car accident, trip somebody. You're liable for that. Well, what happened to her wasn't that. Well, she was having friends over and going back to those friends where you think, hey, no matter, they're not going to go after me. Well, we're hosting a party. A friend is walking in the front door holding a food tray. The dog is in front of her. She doesn't see it. She tripped. She fell. She actually ended up breaking her hip. So, of course, big medical expenses. Who's that going to go after now? It's going after the homeowner. And because it was caused by an animal, which is animal liability, not your personal liability, it was not covered. So huge medical expenses going out of the homeowner's pocket, where I think animal liability for the year is maybe a couple extra $100. So you can only imagine how bad we felt, because we go, okay, well, did we not do a good enough job explaining this to her? Did we not really warn her enough? And you kind of think back like, no, we talked through this, but we were still denied because she wanted to save the extra couple bucks. Now, unfortunately, in hindsight's 2020, you go back and go, was this worth it? Another one where opposite side of the spectrum, thankfully our client was fully covered with liability, was he was at the gym. He's at the gym on a stair stepper. He gets off the stair stepper, steps backwards, bumps into an older gentleman, and the older man falls over, breaks his shoulder, just catching himself on the floor. Same thing. That gentleman says, "Oh no, I'm not going to sue. I'm going to take care of myself." Well, of course, as he's going to these medical bills, he has to go look where that's going to be covered from. Well, it goes to that guy's homeowner's personal liability. Thankfully, he had $500,000, which is usually the max before you start going into an umbrella policy. So he had plenty of coverage to go help this gentleman with his medical bills. It's just one of those stories where he properly did it. Well, he was safe. He didn't have to have anything out of pocket. And it's very much like, okay, great. He understood the risk. He covered himself, and it worked in his favor.
Yeah.
So
That's one of the misconceptions that I know I've had for forever too. It's insurance does not only cover for something that happens at the home,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something that most people don't know,
Yes.
right? That's that going back to the content that look, people actually appreciate that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't know that they're covered when they have some sort of coverage.
It's one thing I highlight every time I'm going through a quote. People go, "Oh, well, why do I have $500,000 in liability?" Because you can do 100, 300, or 500. Well, it really doesn't move the needle on your premium as much as you would expect. So I always say, hey, max that out, and here's why. And I explain just that, because it's not only if something happens at your own personal home, but it follows you around town, and it really is protecting you from any sort of being liable for property damage, for injury, for lawsuits. And like we just said, going back to this day and age, everyone's looking for a quick payout. Everyone's looking for a reason to go sue.
Yeah.
And it works. I hear stories all the time of people getting these large paychecks for, whatever it is. And some of them are valid reasons, and some of them are just looking for, anything that they have a dollar. Yeah. And you need to protect yourself from that. You never know.
No, I get it. Changing gears a little bit, more into just something I'm a super nerd about, like sales and stuff, and kind of talk to us a little bit about your process, your personal, how you've built your sales, and how do you do just, how do you build your business?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my background, I say that I've been in customer service my entire life. All through high school and college, I was working in the restaurant industry. So I was, a busboy to a server to a bartender. And I think that plays a big role in kind of how I built my career in life. And you might not think about it, but I tell this to my wife all the time, like, hey, our kids are going to work in the restaurant industry because it taught me invaluable skills and lessons of how to work with people, how to deal with people, how to provide customer service, and take pride in that. So that's kind of like the foundation. And it sounds funny because you go, oh, the restaurant industry, well, that doesn't, make a whole lot of sense, but it really does. And from there, after college, I got into software. So I actually was in the software industry for about 9 or 10 years. And that's a very different mindset, because you have to go into that consultative. You're not you can't convince someone that they need software when you're selling to these companies. You're selling a solution, but you need to kind of explain to them, you need to understand the problem. You need to sell outcomes. You're not selling like, hey, here's my product, here's what it does, and here's the price. Because there's, you throw a stone, you're going to find someone who sells that same software, but you need to do it a little bit differently. And like you said at the very beginning of this conversation, people buy from people. Yes, they want to understand your product, they want to understand your price, but they also want to like you. They want to make sure that they're in good hands, that they're safe. So my background in software, taught me invaluable skills of how to deal with people from all walks of life. You're dealing with executives, you're dealing with engineers, you're dealing with HR, whatever it is. They all have different interests and worries and priorities. So being able to navigate those personalities, those people, it plays a vital role in how you approach anything in your day to day. A lot of people say like, oh, I don't need sales experience, I do this or I do that. Well, you're selling yourself every day. People might not realize it, but sales falls into every single aspect of life.
Oh yeah.
Maybe you're trying to convince your wife you need something. Hey, I'm going to go sell her on this right now. I'm going to go sell her why I'm allowed to take this fishing trip this weekend, And people might not realize it, but that's sales. Um, and sales could have a very negative connotation, as I'm sure you know. People think of, hey, that sleazy car
Sleazy,
salesman,
yeah.
and that's like the thing everyone thinks about, and that's where you always want to kind of veer away from. Like, no, I'm not here to go do any tricks behind it. I'm not gonna go walk away, go play on my phone, and come back and say, hey, I got a better price for you now. No, you need to sell them on value. You need to sell them on, again, the outcomes, what you have to offer, what differentiates you from the rest. And adding some sort of, that value prop is huge of like, hey, here's why I'm not better. I don't want to say, hey, I'm better than anyone, but like, here's what I do differently. Here's what you're gonna get when you work with me. So yeah, I think sales is extremely important in any walk of life. Um, we all see on social media, we all read the self-help books, and you're going to get different bits and pieces. The Jeremy Miner NEPQ book, and I've read that of how to ask the questions, and I think sales is so fascinating because there's that psychological aspect to it, which you're not trying to trick people, but you want to learn how to get in their mind and kind of sell based off of what's important to them. And that's very true to, again, anything you're gonna do. So, um, leaving software was tough. I had done it for so long, but I had just realized that it was time to do something different. And leading back to sales, why I wanted to do it, because in software, you're selling to, a Fortune 500 corporation. You're selling to these tech executives where there's not a whole lot of personality. There's not a lot of getting to know that person. You're getting to know the company, which is fine. That's great. I did it for many years. I got to work with a lot of great people, a lot of great companies, but I realized that I wanted to work with people. I wanted to go understand this person, learn about them, learn about what's important to them and how I can protect them, which was a natural sort of transition into insurance.
Yeah.
I sat down with a close family friend of mine for one dinner. After that dinner, I left going, I wish I did this 5 years ago.
Wow.
Because just the industry, the understanding of how it's changing. This industry is changing. I think historically, insurance is not something that a lot of these guys or girls graduating college go, I want to go get into insurance. It's just not top of mind until you really learn about it. You learn about the value. You learn about the long-term effects. Having something tangible at the end of the day, where I build that book of business, I'm able to service my clients. I know them, they know me. It was never really like that in the software. You sell a solution, and then I'm gone. It goes to a new team, and I never really talk to those people again. And it felt so transactional, which is the complete opposite of what I get to do now.
That is. I get, yeah, with us too. It's in the finance side of it too. With mortgage, a lot of it can be very transactional. When I got started, I was like in a call center,
Yeah.
and it was transactional. You sold them, shipped them off to the processing department, and then that's
You never hear from them.
right again, right? And the way we've built our company now is different. It goes away from the transactional side of it, and it's more the consultative and building those relationships so we can build long term.
Exactly.
It's getting to wrapping up a little bit. I'll just kind of one of my last questions. It's, where do you see the insurance industry going into this 2026 and move forward?
Yeah. No, I love that. Like, for example, the coffee and collab events, like we really learn about the market, and you kind of understand like what's going on, and not only our community, but our state, and like what's going on in this market. So it's hard to say, I think insurance is hopefully becoming more of a necessity for people. Like, yes, we all have it, but I feel like it's one of those products or services that people buy blindly. And I hope, like, and it's something that I want to change, and a lot of other agents are trying to gravitate towards, is again like consultative selling, where you're selling a product and you're kind of educating your clients. So I'm hoping insurance goes to one of those things where people care. They want to understand like what they're protecting, like what are my assets, where do I need to have more coverage, or where am I overpaying? Where are the gaps? Where are the risks? I feel like maybe historically insurance was very much like, okay, I'm buying a house. My lender suggested this guy, whatever he sends me, I'm signing and I'm buying. I'm not taking the time to really understand like, where am I protected? What does this mean to me? So I really do hope that insurance kind of turns into one of those things, or one of those products where, it doesn't need to be the most exciting thing. It doesn't need to be someone's jumping up and down about insurance, but I want people need to understand that they need to care about this, because it's one of those products that you don't care about until you need to care about it, or until you need it. And by that time, if you're not in a good place, it's too late. And it's unfortunate, because then you kind of look back and go, man, like I wish I just took a extra 5-10 minutes to understand what I was getting into. So I really do think, and I see it in the content, I see it in the market, I see it in conversations like this, that more and more people in the industry, or consumer on the consumer side, they are they are caring about insurance more. And they are trying to educate themselves. They're asking the right questions, and they understand the risk involved if they are buying based off of the driving the bottom dollar premium. Like, hey, cool. Well, now you have an insurance policy where if your house burns down, you have enough budget to go rebuild 3/4 of your house. Is that what you want to do, or do you want to pay the extra couple $100 and make sure that if something happens in life, you and your family aren't at risk to where you don't have a roof over your head? And I think that's a pretty valid reason to care, and I think people need to understand that, and they are. So that's where I really do hope the industry is going. It's great to see, again, a lot of things like this happening where people are having these collaborative conversations because it brings it to light. And people really understand, like, okay, I just saw this clip on Instagram or on TikTok, and I do get now. I understand this a little bit more, but now I'm going to go ask my agent. Let me go figure this out. Let me kind of dig into this a little bit. And it's a very simple conversation. It doesn't have to be a long, drawn out process. It's just ask the right questions, work with the right agent, get educated a little bit, and you're going to have that peace of mind. Like, I think that's worth any dollar just to have that peace.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's one of the things that we've been trying to build in this podcast a little bit is that, right, to become a little more collaborative so that, we can educate ourselves more so we can inform our clients of like, hey, again, insurance isn't just, hey, you got to check this box
Yep.
and get it because we need it to close your loan and close your transaction.
Exactly.
But it's more of a consultative, and we can bring in people that we know and we trust to be able to kind of be well-rounded and be able to put that product out to our clients. So, Jared, I really appreciate your time. Everybody, fishing for insurance. You can fish for lobsters, you can fish for content, but really at the end of the day, and I've heard there may be some dances coming up, some TikTok dances. So
My lesson's going now. We practice every night. Me and my son, we have dance parties. We're getting ready to go.
there you go.
I,
There
I
you go.
really appreciate you guys having me.
No, I appreciate your time. So we'll put your contact information on the bottom, or I don't know how we do that stuff because that's not what I do. But I really appreciate your time, and thank you guys. Thank you everybody for listening, and we'll come out and we'll have some more content for you guys here soon. Thank you guys.